Have you ever seen how a simple cotton candy can change the fate of two families? On an ordinary Sunday in a Mexico City park, a widowed millionaire watches a single mother who can't afford a treat for her son. His 7-year-old daughter says, "Dad," she can't buy her son a cotton candy. That innocent phrase sets off a chain of events no one could have imagined. What begins as a simple act of kindness transforms into something much greater. Stay until the end to discover how a gesture of generosity becomes a miracle two broken souls needed to believe in love again. The afternoon sun cast a warm glow over Chapultepec Park as Marcos walked slowly beside his daughter, Mariana. At 38, this successful businessman wore impeccable suits and expensive watches, but none of that filled the void in his heart since losing his wife 3 years earlier. His face, though handsome and well-groomed, bore lines of exhaustion no fortune could erase. Little Mariana, just turned 7, skipped between the benches, pointing at balloons and street vendors, trying to coax even a small smile from her father. Marcos watched her with tenderness, but even that deep love couldn't heal the wound in his soul. The park was filled with happy families, children's laughter, and couples holding hands, everything he had lost and thought impossible to regain. "Dad, look, that man selling ice pops. Can you buy me one?" Mariana asked, tugging at the sleeve of his beige shirt. Marcos nodded gently, pulling out his leather wallet and paying without glancing at the price. For him, money was never an issue, but it hadn't solved his loneliness either. As Mariana happily licked her tamarind ice pop, he sat on a weathered wooden bench and looked around. The joyful voices of children playing soccer on the grass contrasted with the silence that reigned in his mansion every night. His company grew, his bank account swelled, but his home remained a cold mausoleum inhabited only by him, his daughter, and memories of a woman who would never return. Marcos sighed deeply, wondering if he'd ever feel whole again, if life would ever give him a reason to smile genuinely. Mariana ran to the playground, and Marcos followed her with his gaze, ensuring she was safe. A cool breeze rustled the tree leaves, carrying the sweet scent of cotton candy sold near the central fountain. That smell reminded him of his own childhood Sundays, when his mother took him to the park, and everything seemed simpler, purer. Now, with all the success in the world, he felt more lost than ever. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Probably another work message, another urgent meeting, another $1 million contract to sign. He ignored it. For the first time in months, he decided to simply be present, though that presence was tinged with melancholy. He watched as Mariana climbed onto the swings, asking him to push her. Her little face lit up with joy he barely remembered feeling. He approached and began pushing her gently, her crystalline laughter like celestial music amidst the noise. "Higher, Dad, higher," she shouted excitedly. For a moment, Marcos felt the weight in his chest lighten. Maybe all wasn't lost. Maybe in his daughter's bright eyes, there was enough light to guide him back to life. But as quickly as the thought came, it vanished, replaced by the cold reality. When he helped Mariana off the swing, they returned to that huge, empty house where the hallways echoed with loneliness, where rooms stayed closed because opening them meant facing absence, where every corner reminded him he'd built an empire, but lost the only thing that truly mattered, a complete family. Marcos helped Mariana down, and she took his hand with absolute trust. "I love you, Dad," she said suddenly, looking at him with honey-colored eyes identical to her mother's. He felt a lump in his throat and knelt to hug her tightly, hiding the tears threatening to escape. "I love you too, my princess, more than anything in this world," he murmured into her brown hair. They stayed like that for a few seconds, father and daughter, bound by unbreakable love in a park full of strangers. When they parted, Mariana pointed to a cotton candy stand nearby. "Can you buy me one, Dad? I love the pink ones." Marcos nodded, and they walked toward the stand, unaware that a few meters away, another story was unfolding, one that would soon intertwine with theirs in a way that would change everything. Because sometimes fate finds us when we least expect it, disguised as an ordinary Sunday in the park. Beatriz gripped her son Bruno's small hand as they walked through the same park, trying to hide the worry weighing on her heart. At her age, this woman with gentle eyes and long black hair tied in a ponytail carried the weight of the world on her slender shoulders. Her simple olive green dress, wore at the seams, and her faded brown sandals told the story of someone fighting daily to survive. She hadn't eaten since breakfast, so Bruno could have a full lunch. In her pocket, only a few coins remained, which she needed for the bus back to their tiny apartment in the Santa Maria neighborhood. The park was their free escape, the only place she could give her son something resembling a normal childhood, even if just for a few hours each Sunday. "Mommy, look at all the kids playing," Bruno said, pointing excitedly toward the playground, his brown eyes shining with innocence that broke Beatriz's heart. She smiled tenderly, though inside she felt herself crumbling. All those children had parents who could buy them toys, new clothes, plentiful food. She could barely keep a roof over their heads. Bruno's father had abandoned them when he learned of pregnancy, leaving her alone with a growing belly and an uncertain future. Since then, she'd worked whatever job she could, cleaning houses, washing clothes, caring for other people's children while neglecting her own health. But the economic crisis had hit hard, and jobs were scarcer than ever. For 2 months, she had no steady work, and her savings had evaporated like water in the desert. Sleepless nights spent calculating bills that never added up had etched dark circles under her eyes that cheap makeup could no longer hide. Bruno ran to a bench and sat, swinging his little legs that didn't reach the ground. Beatriz sat beside him and hugged him, breathing in the scent of budget soap in his hair. "Are you happy, my love?" she asked, needing to hear yes, needing to know that despite everything, her son could still smile. Bruno nodded enthusiastically, but then his gaze drifted to something shiny in the distance. Beatriz followed his eyes and saw the cotton candy stand, its pink and blue clouds looking like something from a fairy tale. Her stomach sank, knowing what was coming. "Mommy, can you buy me a cotton candy? Please, please," Bruno pleaded with a voice so sweet it could melt the hardest heart. Beatriz felt the world stop. She had exactly 18 pesos in her pocket. The bus fare home was 32 pesos for both, and she still had 3 days until she'd be paid for a favor she'd done for a neighbor. "My darling, I can't today," she said, her voice breaking, hating herself for denying him something so simple. Bruno lowered his head, disappointment clouding his round face. "But I promise, as soon as I get a job, I'll buy you the biggest cotton candy I can find," she said, trying to sound hopeful, but the words carried a sadness she couldn't hide. Bruno nodded silently, and that was worse than any tantrum. Her son was learning to resign himself, to expect little from life, and that broke Beatriz's heart in a way no physical pain could. She hugged him tightly, as if her embrace could erase all their lacks, all the hungry nights, all the time she'd had to say no. Tears welled in her eyes, but she held them back. If she started crying in the middle of a park full of happy people, she might never stop. A group of children ran by, laughing and chasing each other, each holding an ice cream or a treat. Bruno watched them with longing, but said nothing more. Beatriz felt a mix of pride and pain seeing how mature her little boy was becoming. Too mature for his 5 years. Children his age were supposed to be mischievous, to ask for things without understanding money's value, to believe the world was a magical place where wishes came true. But Bruno already knew the meaning of no. He understood that mommy couldn't always, no matter how much she wanted to. "Come, let's go see the ducks in the lake," Beatriz suggested, trying to distract him, to keep this Sunday from being ruined entirely. Bruno climbed off the bench and took her hand without complaint, walking beside her with short steps. As they moved along the gravel path, Beatriz looked up at the clear sky and whispered a silent prayer. "Asterisk God, give me strength to keep going. Let me find a job soon. I don't ask for riches, just enough for my son to be a child." Asterisk unbeknownst to her, at that very moment, a few meters away, someone was about to hear her prayer. Mariana was walking hand in hand with her father toward the cotton candy stand, when her eyes landed on something that stopped her in her tracks. A few meters away, on a weathered bench, a woman hugged a small boy who looked sadly toward the same candy stand. The scene was so clear, so transparent in its pain, that even a 7-year-old could understand it completely. Mariana tugged her father's sleeve harder than usual, making Marcos pause and look down. "What's wrong, princess?" he asked softly, following her gaze. Then he saw it. The thin woman in the olive green dress holding the boy close, her eyes glistening with unshed tears, her lips trembling as she spoke to him. Something about the image struck Marcos in the chest like an invisible fist, forcing him to acknowledge another suffering. "Dad," Mariana whispered, her voice filled with compassion far beyond her years. "She can't buy her son a cotton candy." Those simple words, spoken with a child's pure innocence, echoed in Marcos's ears, refusing to fade. He looked closer, noticing the worn but clean clothes, the old sandals, the way she checked her pocket with trembling fingers only to close it in resignation. The boy had lowered his head, and the woman rocked him gently, as if trying to soothe a pain no embrace could fully heal. Marcos felt something stir within him, an emotion buried for years under layers of work, meetings, and routine that shielded him from feeling too much. But there was, reviving in his chest, reminding him he was still human, still capable of being moved by others' suffering. "Come with me, my love," Marcos said, taking Mariana's hand firmly and walking toward the cotton candy stand. The vendor, an older man with a gray mustache and a sugar-stained apron, greeted him with a kind smile. "Good afternoon, sir. What can I get you?" Marcos pulled out his wallet and pointed to the largest cotton candies on display. "I want 2 of the biggest you have, 1 pink and 1 yellow, please." He paid without waiting for change and took the 2 fluffy, cloud-like treats in vibrant colors. Mariana looked at him with admiration, as if her father were a superhero about to perform an extraordinary feat. "Let's do something good today, okay?" Marcos asked his daughter, and she nodded eagerly, understanding his intentions perfectly. Together, they walked toward Beatriz and Bruno, their steps purposeful yet filled with a tenderness Marcos hadn't felt in years. Beatriz looked up as she noticed someone approaching her bench. A tall man in a beige shirt and dark brown pants, accompanied by a pretty girl in a white dress with flowers, stood before her with a gentle smile. For a moment, fear flickered, that automatic distrust born from a life that had struck her too many times. But something in the man's eyes conveyed peace. "Excuse the interruption," Marco said warmly, "but my daughter and I noticed the little one wanted cotton candy." He extended the yellow cotton candy toward Bruno, who looked at his mother for permission, his brown eyes wide with surprise. Beatriz felt words catch in her throat, unable to process what was happening. "Please, accept it," Marcos continued. "It would be an honor for us." Mariana stepped closer and smiled at Bruno with genuine joy, holding her own pink cotton candy, as if to show it was okay to accept. Bruno looked at his mother with pleading eyes, and Beatriz, tears now streaming freely down her cheeks, nodded slowly. The boy took the yellow cotton candy with both hands, as if it were the world's greatest treasure, a huge smile lighting up his face. "Thank you, sir, thank you," he murmured excitedly before taking a small bite of the sweet cloud. Beatriz tried to speak, to find words for what she felt, but all she managed was to press a trembling hand to her lips as she sobbed silently. "You don't have to thank us," Marco said gently, understanding that sometimes gestures speak louder than words. He knelt to Bruno's level and ruffled his hair affectionately. "Enjoy it, champ." Then he stood, gave Beatriz a look of understanding and respect, and took Mariana's hand. "Have a wonderful afternoon," he said, walking away without expecting further gratitude, without seeking recognition. For him, that simple act of kindness was reward enough. But neither could imagine that this brief encounter was just the beginning of something much bigger, something fate had already begun weaving in secret. For days later, Marcos entered a small cafe in the Roman neighborhood for a business meeting. The aroma of freshly ground coffee and sweet bread filled the cozy space, decorated with local artist paintings and hanging plants. His partner was due in 20 minutes, so he ordered an Americano and reviewed documents while waiting. He sat by the window, watching the constant movement of the street. Students with backpacks, hurried office workers, street vendors offering their wares. The city's chaotic rhythm flowed as usual, but Marcos felt strangely calm that day. Something had shifted in him since that Sunday in the park, a feeling hard to explain. Like a long-closed door in his heart had begun to crack open. The waiter brought his steaming coffee, and Marcos thanked him with a genuine smile, something his employees would have found unusual lately. As he sipped his coffee and reviewed an investment contract, a woman's voice at the counter caught his attention. I understand, ma'am, but I really need this job. I can start tomorrow if needed. The tone was pleading but dignified, the voice of someone asking for a chance, not charity. Marcos looked up out of curiosity and felt his heart skip a beat. It was her, the woman from the park. Beatriz stood before the cafe owner, dressed in simple black pants and a worn white long-sleeve blouse, her black hair tied in a low bun, stray strands framing her tired, worried face. The owner, a robust middle-aged woman in a patterned apron, shook her head while arranging cups behind the counter. I'm really sorry, but I already have 2 girls working here, and I can't afford another. Plus, I need someone who can stay late on weekends. I can stay late, no problem, Beatriz insisted, her voice growing desperate. Her hands gripped the counter's edge, as if that contact could change the answer. I'm very responsible. I learn quickly. I can clean, serve whatever you need. The owner sighed with genuine pity, clearly pained to reject someone in such need. Look, dear, I believe you, but you mentioned you have a young son. What will you do with him if you're working until 10 or 11 at night? Beatriz opened her mouth to respond, but no words came. That question haunted her in every interview, every opportunity. She had no family in the city, no one to watch Bruno during irregular hours. Her neighbor, who sometimes helped, could only do so for a few hours during the day, never at night. It was a vicious cycle. She needed to work to support her son, but couldn't because she had no one to leave him with. I understand, Beatriz murmured, lowering her head, fighting back tears. She wouldn't cry there, not in front of strangers, not again. Thank you for your time, ma'am. She turned to leave, her shoulders slumped in defeat, when a man's voice stopped her cold. Excuse me, Beatriz. She turned confused and saw the man from the park, the one who bought Bruno the cotton candy. Sitting at a table by the window with a coffee cup, Marcos stood and approached her with a kind expression. I'm Marcos. We met Sunday in Chapultepec Park. Beatriz felt her cheeks burn with shame. Of all the people to witness her humiliation, it had to be him, the generous man who'd already seen her poverty once. Yes, I remember, she replied, her voice barely audible, wishing the ground would swallow her. Thank you again for what you did that day. Bruno hasn't stopped talking about the cotton candy. Marcos noticed her discomfort, the way she avoided his gaze, and decided to be direct but gentle. I overheard your conversation with the cafe owner. Are you looking for work? Beatriz nodded, biting her lip, debating whether to open up to a stranger or flee. But something in his warm, non-judgmental eyes made her stay. Yes, I've been looking for 2 months. It's hard to find something that lets me be with my son when he needs me. Marcos nodded understandingly and gestured to his table. Would you like to sit for a moment? I'd love to talk if you have time. Beatriz hesitated, glancing at the door, then back at him. Every instinct urged caution, but what did she have to lose? She'd already hit rock bottom. Okay, she agreed. Follow him to the table by the window. She sat in the chair he offered, clutching her worn bag like a shield. Neither knew that this casual conversation in a cafe was about to change their lives forever. Marcos ordered another coffee for himself and offered one to Beatriz, who accepted shyly, grateful but still uneasy. The waiter brought 2 steaming cups and a basket of sweetbread Marcos had ordered. Please, help yourself, he said naturally, pushing the basket toward her. Beatriz took a small conchus more out of courtesy than hunger, though her stomach had been growling for hours. As she sipped the hot coffee that soothed her soul, Marcos began the conversation casually, asking about her son, his name, his age. She answered cautiously at first, but his genuine curiosity relaxed her. Bruno's 5, turning 6 in December. He's a good boy, very calm, never causes trouble. Her voice filled with maternal pride, a love that transcended any hardship. Marcos listened attentively, nodding without interrupting, giving her space to share what she needed. Forgive me for asking, but Bruno's father? The question hung delicately in the air. Beatriz looked down at her cup, watching the steam rise in thin spirals. He left when he found out I was pregnant. Never came back, never met his son. The words came out emotionless, as if she told the story so many times it no longer hurt, though both knew that was a lie. Marcos felt a mix of indignation and sadness at the injustice. "I'm so sorry. No one deserves that," he said sincerely. Beatriz shrugged, a gesture meant to downplay the abandonment that had shaped her life. "It's in the past. Now I just care about giving my son what he needs, even if it's little." Her determination was evident, even in how she held her cup with steady hands despite the tremor within. Marcos admired her quiet strength, her ability to keep fighting against all odds. "I heard the main issue with finding work is not having someone to watch Bruno," he said, steering the conversation to what mattered most. Beatriz nodded tiredly, as if she'd given this explanation countless times without success. "That's right. I have no family in Mexico City. My parents passed away years ago, and I have no siblings. A neighbor helps sometimes, but only during the day for a few hours. No formal job accepts that limitation." Her frustration was palpable, the sense of being trapped in a maze with no exit. Marcos took a sip of his coffee, carefully considering how to phrase what he was about to propose. He didn't want it to sound condescending or like pity. This was different, a genuine opportunity that could benefit them both. "Beatriz, I'll be direct because I think you're someone who values honesty. I need to hire someone to manage my home, a housekeeper." He raised a hand before she could interrupt. "Please, let me finish. My wife passed away 3 years ago, and since then I've had several employees, but none have worked out. Mariana, my daughter, is sensitive and doesn't adapt easily to strangers. I need someone responsible, caring, who understands what it means to raise a child with true love." Beatriz listened, eyes wide, barely daring to breathe, afraid to break the spell of what she was hearing. The job would include general cleaning, cooking, helping with Mariana when I work late. The salary would be 12,000 pesos a month, with Sundays off and legal benefits. The figure made Beatriz's heart leap. 12,000 pesos was more than she'd earned even in her best times. But then came the part she expected. The reason this sounded too good to be true. "I know your main issue is Bruno," Marcos continued gently, "so I want to offer something more. My house has plenty of space. There's a private employee room with its own bathroom that I never use. If you accept, you and Bruno can live there at no cost, with food included for both." Beatriz felt tears well up unbidden, streaming down her cheeks as she tried to process what she'd heard. It had to be a cruel joke, an illusion of her desperate mind. "Why?" she asked, voice breaking, needing to understand the reason behind such generosity. "Why would you do this for me? You don't even know me." Marco smiled tenderly, recalling the moment in the park when his daughter opened his eyes to something he'd been ignoring. "Because that day in the park, when my daughter said you couldn't buy Bruno a cotton candy, I realized something important. I'd been so wrapped up in my own pain that I'd forgotten to see others suffering. And I realized I need help in my home, help from someone real, someone who knows what it means to love a child above all else." He leaned forward slightly, looking into her eyes. "This isn't charity, Beatriz. It's a real job with real responsibilities. You'd be doing a lot for me and Mariana, and I'm offering you stability for you and Bruno. It's a fair exchange." But Beatriz's face held more than gratitude. There was fear, the paralyzing terror of daring to believe something good could finally happen to her. Asterisk if you're enjoying this story. Don't forget to like this video and comment. God provides. Asterisk. Beatriz wiped her tears with the back of her hand, trying to regain composure as her mind processed the offer. "I don't know what to say," she murmured, voice trembling, fingers clutching the coffee cup like an anchor to reality. "It's too generous, Mr. Marcos, but I can't accept." The words came out painfully, each syllable heavy as lead. Marcos frowned, surprised by her refusal. "Why not? I thought this was exactly what you needed." Beatriz shook her head, ashamed to explain her feelings. "I don't want you to think I'm taking advantage, accepting out of pity. You and your daughter were already so kind in the park. I can't ask for more, it wouldn't be right." Her dignity shone through even in her desperation, that pride that had kept her standing through years of hardship. Marcos realized he wasn't dealing with someone seeking handouts, but a woman of unbreakable principles who'd rather suffer than feel indebted. "Beatriz, look at me," he said firmly but kindly. She raised her eyes, still wet but filled with admirable strength. "This isn't pity. If I wanted to give charity, I'd just hand you money and be done with it. But that wouldn't really help either of us. I'm offering you an honest job where you'll work, and I'll pay you for that work. The housing is no different from companies that provide lodging for employees." He leaned back, letting his words sink in. "And I'll be completely honest with you. I need someone I can trust in my home. Mariana has suffered a lot since losing her mother. The employees I've hired see their job as just a paycheck, with no emotional investment. But when I saw how you care for Bruno, how you hold and protect him, I knew you're different. You know what it means to be a real mother." His words touched something deep in Beatriz, validating that her greatest effort, her love for Bruno, had value in someone else's eyes. "But Mr. Marcos," she insisted, still resisting the dream that seemed impossible, "I don't have formal references. I didn't finish high school because I had to work young. I've only cleaned houses, cared for kids, washed clothes. I'm not a professional employee." Her voice trembled with insecurity, exposing the doubts that had haunted her for years. Marcos shook his head, a small smile on his lips. "The best people I've known didn't have college degrees. My own mother only finished middle school and was the wisest woman I ever met. What matters is character, honesty, heart, and I see all that in you." He leaned forward again, his gaze intense but kind. "Give me a chance to help you, and give yourself a chance to help me. It's a win-win, including for our kids, who could keep each other company." The mention of the children struck a chord in Beatriz. If anything hurt more than her own loneliness, it was seeing Bruno friendless, without other kids to play with. She closed her eyes for a long moment, breathing deeply, torn between fear and hope. When she opened them, she'd made a decision. "Can I really bring Bruno? It won't bother you to have a child running around your house." Her voice sounded almost childlike in its need for reassurance. Marcos laughed softly, a warm sound that lit up his usually serious face. "Beatriz, my house has been too quiet for 3 years. A little kid noise is exactly what it needs. Besides, I think Mariana would be thrilled to have someone to play with. She's alone most of the time." Beatriz felt the resistance within her crumbling, like a brick wall falling piece by piece. "So, when would you want to start?" she asked, voice barely audible, still not fully believing this was happening. "How about next Monday? That gives you a few days to settle your things, notify your current landlord, prepare Bruno." Marcos pulled a business card from his wallet and wrote on the back, "This is my address in Lomas de Chapultepec and my cell number. Call me if you have any questions or need help with the move." Beatriz took the card with trembling hands, reading the address written in clear, firm handwriting. Lomas de Chapultepec, one of the city's most exclusive neighborhoods, a place she'd never imagined visiting, let alone living in. "Thank you, Mr. Marcos," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You don't know what this means to me and my son. I promise you won't regret it. I'll work hard." Marcos extended his hand across the table, and she shook it, sealing an agreement that went beyond work, a silent pact of mutual respect and shared hope. "I know," he replied with conviction, "and I promise you and Bruno will be treated with dignity and respect in my home." They stood simultaneously, standing for a moment, two strangers brought together by extraordinary circumstances. Marcos paid the bill, and they walked to the cafe's exit. Before parting, Beatriz looked at him one last time, her eyes shining with grateful tears. "God bless you, Mr. Marcos. Truly." He nodded softly, moved by her sincerity. "See you Monday, Beatriz, and please, just call me Marcos." As she walked away down the street with a lighter step than when she'd arrived, Marcos watched her, wondering if he'd just made the best decision of his life or opened a door that would change everything he knew. Monday morning came faster than Beatriz expected. Standing before the massive wrought iron gate with her 2 worn suitcases, and Bruno clinging to her hand, her legs trembled. The mansion before her was a 2-story beige structure with wide windows and a perfectly manicured garden that looked straight out of a magazine. "Mommy, are we going to live here?" Bruno asked, eyes wide, unable to process the grandeur. Beatriz swallowed hard and nodded, pressing the intercom button with nervous fingers. "Good morning, I'm Beatriz," she announced, voice shaky. Seconds later, the gate opened with a soft hum, revealing a stone path to the main entrance. They walked slowly, Bruno marveling at everything while Beatriz tried to calm the nerves threatening to paralyze her. Before they reached the door, it opened, and Marcos appeared with a welcoming smile, dressed casually in jeans and a gray shirt. "Welcome," he said with genuine warmth, kneeling to Bruno's level. "You must be the young Bruno, right?" Bruno nodded shyly, hiding slightly behind his mother's legs. Marcos chuckled softly and stood, taking Beatriz's suitcases before she could protest. "Come in. I'll show you the house." The interior was even more impressive than the exterior. Gleaming marble floors, elegant wooden stairs with refined railing, crystal chandeliers hanging from high ceilings. Everything was immaculately clean but felt cold, like a museum where no one truly lived. Beatriz noticed a lack of family photos on the walls, the absence of the clutter children bring, the silence enveloping everything. "The house has 5 bedrooms," Marcos explained as they walked down the main hallway. "But we only use 2, mine and Mariana's. The rest have been closed since," he trailed off, no need to finish. Beatriz understood immediately. Since his wife died, since this house stopped being a home and became a solitary refuge. "Your room is here," Marcos continued, opening a door at the end of the first floor to reveal a spacious, bright room with a double bed, a large wardrobe, and a private bathroom. "It's perfect," Beatriz murmured, unable to believe such a beautiful space would be hers. "And for you, champ," Marcos said to Bruno with a smile, "I have a surprise." He opened an adjacent door, revealing a smaller but equally cozy room painted light green, with a single bed and a wooden dresser. "I thought you might want your own room. Do you like it?" Bruno let go of his mother's hand the first time and ran inside, touching the walls as if he couldn't believe they were real. "It's mine, really?" His voice was filled with disbelief and pure excitement. Beatriz felt tears threatening again. In their old apartment, they'd shared a tiny room with barely space for a mattress on the floor. Bruno had never had his own bed, let alone his own space. "It's all yours," Marcos confirmed, clearly pleased with the boy's reaction. "You can decorate it however you want. Posters, toys, whatever makes you happy." Bruno ran back to his mother and hugged her tightly. "Thank you, Mommy. Thank you." Beatriz hugged him back, unable to speak through the lump in her throat. Marcos gave him a moment of privacy, understanding the magnitude of what something so simple meant to them. After Beatriz and Bruno settled their few belongings in their rooms, Marcos gave them a full tour of the house. He showed them the spacious, modern kitchen with stainless steel appliances Beatriz barely knew how to use, the elegant living room with furniture too perfect to sit on, the formal dining room clearly never used. "Feel free to use everything," Marcos said, noticing Beatriz's hesitation to touch things. "This is your home now. I want you to feel comfortable, not like employees afraid to breathe." His words were sincere, but Beatriz knew it would take time to adjust to such opulence. They ended the tour in the backyard, where unused playground equipment stood. "Mariana used to play here when she was younger," Marcos said, nostalgia in his voice. "But now she prefers her room." Just then, as if summoned, Mariana appeared at the glass sliding door to the garden. She wore a yellow dress with white sandals, her brown hair loose over her shoulders. When she saw Bruno, her eyes lit up with genuine joy. "Bruno!" she exclaimed, running toward him with a huge smile. The boy, exploring the swings, stopped, surprised to hear his name. "Remember me? From the Cotton Candy Park." Bruno nodded shyly, a small smile forming. "Come, I'll show you my room." "I have lots of toys we can share," Mariana said, taking his hand without waiting for a reply. The 2 children ran inside, their laughter suddenly filling the empty space that had lingered in the house for so long. Marcos and Beatriz stood alone in the garden, watching the kids disappear upstairs. "I've never seen her so excited," Marcos admitted softly, a mix of surprise and relief in his expression. "Bruno either," Beatriz replied, feeling warmth spread in her chest. "He doesn't have friends. I couldn't afford classes or activities where he could meet other kids." They looked at each other for a moment. 2 single parents recognizing the same struggle, the same unconditional love. the same guilt for not giving more. "Well," Marco said, breaking the silence with a genuine smile, "it looks like that's about a change for both of them." In that moment, as the morning sun lit the garden revived by children's laughter, something began to heal in that house that had been silently grieving for 3 long years. The first days in the mansion passed like a dream Beatriz feared waking from. Each morning, she rose early, still unaccustomed to the comfort of a soft mattress and clean, lavender-scented sheets. She prepared breakfast in the huge kitchen, ensuring Bruno ate well before Mariana came down. The children ate together at the kitchen counter, chatting and laughing as if they'd known each other forever. Marcos came down later, dressed in a suit for work, joining them for a few minutes before leaving. Beatriz noticed how his eyes softened at the sound of the children's joyful voices, how a genuine smile began to replace the serious expression that once seemed permanent. She threw herself into her tasks with near-obsessive care, cleaning every corner, cooking homemade meals that filled the house with aromas absent for too long. She wanted to prove to Marcos that he'd made the right choice, that she was worth the opportunity. But beyond the work, she was discovering something unexpected, a sense of belonging, of home, of family she thought she'd lost forever. One Wednesday afternoon, while folding freshly washed clothes in the utility room, Beatriz heard a sharp cry that made her drop everything and run upstairs. She found Mariana in the hallway, clutching her knee, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I fell down the stairs," the girl sobbed. Beatriz knelt immediately, carefully inspecting the slightly bloody scraped knee. "It's okay, sweetheart. It's not serious," she said in the soft, maternal voice she used with Bruno when he got hurt. She scooped Mariana into her arms with ease and carried her to the bathroom, cleaning the wound with warm water and soap while talking gently to distract her from the sting. "You're very brave, you know? Braver than many adults I know." Mariana looked at her with big, shiny eyes, not from pain, but something deeper, something she'd been searching for without knowing how to find it. Beatriz applied a bandage with butterfly designs and kissed the knee. "They're good as new. A magic kiss always works." Mariana smiled through her tears and, without warning, hugged Beatriz tightly around the neck. "Thank you, Beatriz. You're like a mommy." The words hit Beatriz straight in the heart, filling her with such intense emotion she had to close her eyes to keep from crying. She hugged the girl gently, rocking her as she did with Bruno. "And you're a very special girl," she whispered into her hair, feeling an invisible bond forming, something beyond work, beyond obligations. When Mariana pulled away, her smile was radiant, the pain of the fall forgotten. "Can I go play with Bruno?" she asked with renewed enthusiasm. Beatriz nodded, watching as the girl carefully descended the stairs and ran to the garden, where Bruno built imaginary castles with stones. That night, when Marcos returned from work, Mariana recounted the story with childish drama, exaggerating the wound size and her bravery. And Beatriz fixed it with her magic kiss. "Dad, just like Mom used to do." Marcos looked at Beatriz over his daughter's head, his eyes conveying gratitude words couldn't express. She nodded modestly, feeling that maybe, just maybe, she was doing more than just working in the house. Days turned into weeks, and a comforting routine settled in the Lomas mansion. Mornings brought noisy breakfast with the kids playfully fighting over the last pancake. Afternoons were filled with homework supervised by Beatriz while she prepared dinner. Nights ended with family dinners where everyone shared their day. Marcos began coming home earlier, eager for those moments around the table absent from his life for so long. Beatriz cooked traditional Mexican dishes, mole poblano, green enchiladas, red rice, refried beans, that filled the house with homey aromas. "I haven't eaten like this since my mother was alive," Marcos confessed one night after a second helping of chili relleno. His comment made Beatriz smile, discovering that cooking for someone who genuinely appreciated her food was one of life's simplest but most satisfying pleasures. The children became inseparable, Bruno following Mariana like a little shadow, and she naturally took on the role of big sister. They played in the garden until dark, building forts with old sheets, chasing each other among the trees, inventing elaborate superhero stories. One Saturday night, after putting the kids to bed, they'd fallen asleep watching a movie in the living room, Marcos invited Beatriz for coffee on the back terrace. She accepted shyly, still not fully used to interacting with him outside work. They sat in wicker chairs under the stars, the cool October air brushing their faces. "I want to thank you," Marcos began, his voice sincere in the night's tranquility. "You've brought life to this house in a way I didn't think possible." Mariana's changing. She smiles more, talks more. She's truly happy. Beatriz stirred her coffee, watching the dark swirl in the cup. She's a wonderful girl. She just needed to feel loved, to know someone was there for her. Marcos nodded, his gaze lost in the dark garden. "After I lost my wife, I shut down emotionally. I thought I was protecting Mariana by shielding her from pain, but I was only keeping her from life." His confession was vulnerable, honest, stripped of his usual defenses. "You've reminded me that living isn't just existing, it's connecting, feeling, daring to be happy again." Beatriz listened silently, sensing something shift in the air between them, subtle but undeniable. As the stars shone above like silent witnesses, both felt the beginning of something neither dared name yet, but it grew as inevitably as the flowers blooming again in that forgotten garden. 3 months after Beatriz and Bruno moved in, the change was undeniable to anyone who knew the family. The house, once a cold museum, now vibrated with energy, laughter bouncing off the walls, the constant aroma of homemade food, toys scattered on the floor that Beatriz picked up each night with a smile. Mariana had blossomed like a flower after rain. Her grades improved. She participated more in class, and she made new friends who visited on Saturdays. Bruno thrived too, gaining healthy weight, his cheeks now round and rosy, his eyes bright without the worry no child should have. But the most striking change was in Marcos. The serious, distant man buried in work had become a present father, arriving early to dine with his family, playing with the kids in the garden, laughing easily. And each time his eyes met Beatriz's across the dinner table, something sparked, something both felt but neither dared mention yet. One Sunday afternoon, Marcos entered the kitchen where Beatriz was preparing hibiscus water, moving with the natural grace of someone who finally felt at home. "Beatriz, I have an idea," he announced with rare enthusiasm. "What if we all go to Chapultepec Park tomorrow? The kids have a school holiday." Beatriz turned, surprised, wiping her hands on the embroidered apron Mariana had given her. "The park altogether?" Her voice betrayed the excitement she tried to contain. Marcos nodded, stepping closer, leaning against the counter. "Yes, like a family, because that's what we are now, don't you think?" The words hung in the air, laden with deeper meaning. Beatriz felt her heart pound so loudly she was sure he could hear it. "Yes," she replied softly. "That's what we are." Marcos smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners, a genuine smile that was once rare, but now frequent. "It's settled then. We leave early, bring food for a picnic, let the kids play until they're exhausted." Monday dawned with a clear sky, perfect for the outing. The kids woke excited, dressing quickly and racing downstairs with backpacks full of toys. Beatriz had prepared a huge basket with sandwiches, cut fruit, natural juices, and homemade cookies. Marcos drove his black SUV to Chapultepec, while the kids sang children's songs in back, Bruno inventing funny lyrics that made Mariana laugh hysterically. Beatriz looked out the window, watching the city pass, remembering all the Sundays she'd walked these streets penniless, carrying the heavy burden of worry. Now she sat comfortably, stomach full, no debts drowning her, with a happy child singing behind her. "What are you thinking?" Marcos asked, noticing her silence. She looked at him, eyes shining with grateful tears. How different everything is now, how life can change in an instant when you least expect it. Marcos reached out and took her hand, their fingers intertwining naturally, as if designed to fit perfectly. "Thank God for that day in the park," he murmured, and she nodded, squeezing his hand tenderly. They arrived at the park and found a perfect spot under a large tree near the lake, spreading a colorful blanket and unpacking the food basket. The kids ran to the playground, shouting with pure joy. Marcos and Beatriz sat on the blanket, watching them play, enjoying the warm November sun. "Beatriz," Marcos began after a comfortable silence, his voice serious but soft. She turned, noting the intensity in his gaze. These past months have been the best I've had in years. And it's not just because the house is tidy or the food's delicious. It's you, the way you make me feel alive again, how you care for Mariana like she's your own, how your smile every morning makes me want to face the day. Beatriz felt the air leave her lungs, her heart hammering. Marcos, she whispered, but he raised a hand gently. Let me finish, please. I know we started this as a work arrangement, but it's become more, at least for me. I don't want you to be just the housekeeper. I want you to be part of this family for real, permanently. His eyes searched hers with absolute vulnerability, hoping, fearing, yearning. I feel the same, Beatriz confessed, tears streaming down her cheeks. I fell in love with this life, with Mariana, with waking up every day in this house that's become my home. She paused, breathing shakily. And I fell in love with you, with your kindness, how you love your daughter, how you made me feel worthy again when I thought I deserved nothing good. Marcos felt his chest fill with overwhelming warmth, a happiness he thought impossible to feel again. He leaned toward her slowly, giving her time to pull away, but she didn't move. Their lips met in a sweet kiss, full of silent promises and shared hopes. When they parted, both were smiling through tears. Dad, Beatriz, come to the swings. Mariana shouted from the playground, oblivious to the monumental moment that had just occurred. Bruno ran to them, grabbing his mother's hand. Mommy, did you see how high I went on the slide? Beatriz laughed, wiping her tears and standing. I saw it, my love. You were so brave. Marco stood too, taking her hand again as they walked together to where the kids waited. In that moment, under Mexico City's blue sky, for broken hearts found a way to heal together, becoming something stronger, more beautiful than they'd ever been apart. 6 months later, on a warm May Sunday, Marcos woke to the sound of children's laughter from the garden. He stretched in bed, feeling a deep peace that had become constant. He walked to the window, watching Beatriz chase the kids among the trees, their squeals of joy filling the air. She wore a peach-colored floral dress he'd given her the previous week, her black hair shining in the morning sun. There was something different about her now, a radiant inner light of confidence and happiness. She was no longer the scared, defeated woman he'd met in the park nearly a year ago. She was strong, secure, loved, and he loved her with an intensity that surprised him daily. He dressed quickly and went to the garden, where Bruno and Mariana ran to him, shouting his name. Papa Marcos, look what we made. Bruno exclaimed, calling him that naturally, as if he'd always been his father. The boy showed him a drawing they'd made together. For figures holding hands under a big sun, the word family written in colorful crayons. Marcos felt a lump in his throat. It's beautiful, champ, he managed, hugging both children tightly. Beatriz approached, radiant, brushing grass off her dress's knees. Good morning, sleepyhead, she greeted with a sweetness that made his world feel right. Good morning, my love, he replied, kissing her softly, unconcerned that the kids were watching. They'd grown used to these displays of affection, even celebrating them with giggles. I have a surprise for everyone, Marcos announced with a mysterious tone. How about we go to Chapultepec Park today? The kids jumped with excitement, but Beatriz looked at him curiously, sensing something special in his voice. Just the park? She asked playfully. Marcos smiled enigmatically. Maybe there's more, you'll see. An hour later, they were in the SUV heading to where it all began, filled with the kids' favorite music and lively chatter about school and summer plans. Beatriz glanced at Marcos, intrigued by his plans, but he kept his expression neutral, enjoying the suspense. They arrived at the park and Marcos led them to the exact spot where they'd first met, near the cotton candy stand still run by the same gray-mustached vendor. The kids ran ahead, but Marcos took Beatriz's hand, stopping her. Wait a moment, he said softly. She looked at him, eyes questioning. Do you remember this place? He asked, gesturing around. Beatriz nodded, memories flooding her. How could I forget? I was sitting here, feeling like the most miserable woman in the world, unable to buy my son a cotton candy. Her voice broke slightly, recalling that pain. And then you appeared like an angel sent by God. Marco smiled, pulling something from his pocket. That day, My daughter taught me to look beyond my own suffering. She taught me kindness can change lives, and you taught me love can come when you least expect it, that it's never too late to start again. He opened a small velvet box, revealing a simple but beautiful gold ring with a small diamond sparkling in the sunlight. Beatriz, will you do me the honor of marrying me, making official what we already are in our hearts, a family? Beatriz covered her mouth, tears streaming instantly as she looked at the ring, then at Marcos, who gazed at her with absolute love. Yes, she sobbed. Yes, 1,000 times yes. Marcos slipped the ring onto her finger with trembling hands, then hugged her tightly, spinning her as she laughed and cried. The kids, watching from a safe distance with the cotton candy vendor, who was clearly in on the secret, ran to them, shouting, "Is Beatriz going to be my real mom?" Mariana asked, eyes huge with hope. Beatriz knelt, taking her hands. "If you want, my darling, nothing would make me happier." Mariana threw herself into her arms, hugging her with all her might. Bruno approached Marcos shyly. "And you'll be my dad?" he asked in a small, hopeful voice. Marcos lifted him, holding him close to his heart. "I already am, champ. From the moment you entered my house, you were my son." Bruno hugged his neck, and the four melted into a group embrace, crying and laughing together. A family united not by blood, but by something far more powerful. Love that heals, restores, and makes all things new. The cotton candy vendor approached, tears in his own eyes, holding 4 huge cotton candies. "On the house, folks. Congratulations." Marcos tried to pay, but the old man shook his head firmly. Love isn't charged, it's celebrated. The kids took their cotton candies with joy, their faces lit with perfect smiles. Marcos and Beatriz took theirs, walking hand in hand as the children ran ahead. They sat on the same bench where it all began, watching Mariana and Bruno play, chasing each other among the trees as always. "Life gave me a second chance," Marcos said quietly, squeezing Beatriz's hand. "And that chance is your name." She rested her head on his shoulder, feeling a peace she'd never thought possible. "God is good," she murmured with deep gratitude. "When I had nothing, when I'd lost all hope, he brought me here, to you, to Mariana, to this new life." The breeze blew softly through the trees, carrying the sweet scent of cotton candy and blooming flowers. The children's laughter filled the air, celestial music for 2 hearts that had known pain but now knew something better, the joy of true love, forgiveness, and new beginnings. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in golden and pink hues, this family, born from a simple act of kindness on an ordinary Sunday, walked together toward a future, knowing that together they could face anything, because love, when real, when pure, when from God, has the power to transform even the most broken stories into something beautiful. And this story, which began with tears and need, ended with laughter and abundance, not of money, but of something far more valuable, a family united by unfailing love. Asterisk if the story touched your heart. Don't forget to like this video, and remember, never underestimate the power of a kind act. That simple gesture you made today could be the start of a miracle in someone else's life. May God bless your path, light every step you take, and fill your life with love, hope, and second chances. Just as he transformed Marcos and Beatriz's story, he can transform yours. Never lose faith, because in the darkest moments, God's light shines brightest. Let this story remind you that no act of love is wasted, that all kindness returns multiplied, and that when we trust in God, He always surprises us with blessings beyond our greatest dreams. See you in the next video. May God bless you abundantly. Until soon, asterisk.